Aloha, namaste. My name is Katie Utterback. I am the lead healer and founder of Elevated Aura. And Elevated Aura, if you're not familiar, is an international holistic coaching firm, which means we can coach and work with anyone, anywhere in the world. And our specialty is helping survivors of childhood trauma, toxic relationships, narcissistic abuse, learn self-love and everything involved in that. So shadow work. We look at how you operate in human design and astrology so that we know what kind of challenges that you might experience based on your personal energy, and then what kind of strengths that you might have just being you. So one of the techniques that I like to use with a lot of my clients is the emotional freedom technique, also known as EFT tapping. This is something that you can do on your own pretty much anywhere, anytime. The tools that you need to use would be like your mind, your heart, and then your body. So that's what I mean when I say you can really use this tool anywhere, anytime. And if you're not familiar what like the point of EFT tapping, like the purpose, why we use it with therapy or trying to recover from sort of anxiety, stress, toxic relationships, trauma, any sort of heavy emotion, is that it's essentially an acupuncture alternative, and it's really great for PTSD. There's been a lot of research that EFT tapping is great for veterans who have PTSD, and a lot of childhood trauma survivors, a lot of those of us who end up in toxic relationships or generational trauma. EFT tapping is great because a lot of us have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD. So it's kind of the same thing as PTSD. It's just that instead of there being one traumatic event, there's a whole bunch of maybe smaller little ones. So EFT tapping, I'm going to walk you through it, is something that, like I said, you can do this anytime, anywhere, with just about anything. So EFT tapping, really, the process begins when you check in with yourself. So it could be that you get triggered by an event. So, and in that case, when you're checking in with yourself, you want to ask yourself, okay, what happened? And in the case that you don't necessarily know what happened, you want to note down what emotions are you feeling? And then if you understand why are you feeling that emotion? And then where do you feel it in your body? Do you feel the stress rising in your shoulders and in your neck? Do you feel it in your stomach? Or do you feel just stress in your arms? Like, where is it resonating in your body? And then note, when did this feeling start? If you can't remember, put that down. And then note how your feelings about this situation and how this situation is really impacting you, whether that be on an emotional level, a physical level, a spiritual level, a mental level. Write it all down. And then also try to figure out what stories, especially the old kind of narrative stories about what you should be doing, or, what somebody expected of you. So what old stories about being loved and supported do you need to heal, release, or align? Now, these are things that I can definitely help you with in one-on-one sessions, but these are also things that you can journal about and try to discover on your own. Now, ask yourself the question, how intense is this feeling for me right now? And measure that on a scale of 0 to 10. So 0 is going to represent I have very little to no feelings about this issue. It's not really bothering me. It's not really affecting me. It's not really showing up in my life. It's really not an issue at all. And then a 10 would represent like I have very strong, significant feelings about this issue. Like I think about it, and maybe I just have a stomach ache just thinking about it. Maybe I just instantly start crying. Whatever it is, you instantly get angry. Write down how significant this issue is in your life. So once you've checked in with yourself, once you have an idea of what happened, what emotions you're experiencing, how this is physically showing up in your life, how this is emotionally showing up in your life, spiritually, all of it. And once you have that measurement, we're going to set an intention. So this intention, I want you to really pay attention to this phrase, because there's two parts of this phrase and both parts are really important. So even though I have this, and then whatever your problem is, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Now that second part is incredibly important. It's crucial that you include that in your intention, because that is how we're rebalancing your energy with the EFT tapping. So like I said, EFT tapping is kind of like acupuncture. If you're not familiar with acupuncture, acupuncture is the use of needles to kind of recalibrate your energy by pinpointing specific points in the body with specific needles. This is going to be, EFT tapping is going to be using your hands and tapping to basically do the same thing. It's to recalibrate and redistribute the energy. So if there's a block, we're trying to release it. If there's like too much, like if you have an energy source that's open and it's leaking too much, we're going to try to close that with this tapping, okay? We're trying to rebalance and recalibrate. In order to recalibrate, we need to have both the yin and the yang, right? The polarity. So even though I have this problem, maybe, even though I have this feeling of like I'm not doing enough for my dog when I am working all the time, or even though I have this problem that my mom is sick and I'm scared, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I have this problem with my boss being a dipshit, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. So you can see where I'm going with this. Even though I have this problem with mom guilt, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. So like I said, you can use this for whatever problem arises in your life. Whatever you consider to be a problem, you can insert that into the intention. Just make sure that at the end of the intention, you always include, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. So now that we have our intention, we're going to go into a setup statement. So our setup statement is going to be essentially what we use while we're doing the tapping. So this is giving us permission to say, like, yeah, I'm acknowledging that I feel anxious about this situation, or I'm feeling stressed about this situation, or I'm feeling angry, or whatever emotion it is. And I'm okay with that because I am recognizing that I am a human being and human beings experience stress sometimes. Doesn't matter how many times you do EFT tapping. It doesn't matter how many times you meditate or you try to practice, responding and not reacting. We are all human. We are bound to make mistakes at some point. So as you create that setup statement, you're going to tap on the side of your palm next to your pinky. You're going to like karate chop this point 3 times, okay? Now, you can karate chop using the side of your hand on this point, but I actually like to prefer using 2, 3 to 4 fingers. You can usually use 4 for this part, but I like to use that part because your fingers are what we're going to use for the rest of the tapping points, and it just starts to feel a little bit familiar to keep hitting that same point, same spot. So when you're also karate chopping or tapping, make sure that you're using enough energy, you're using enough force that you feel it, but not too much force that you're in pain or leaving a bruise or any sort of marking, but enough, like I said, that you feel it. It's not too dainty that it's feeling like a feather, like it's just too light. So like I said, get that setup statement. So maybe let's go with the example of mom guilt. So even though I am feeling all of this stress from mom guilt, I deeply and completely love myself. So now that we have that, we want to create, like I said, that setup statement that reminds us of what that problem was and how much we love ourselves, right? Because we have to include both parts. And then we're going to karate chop 3 times. So maybe it's mom guilt, but I love myself. Mom guilt, but I love myself. Mom guilt, but I love myself. So then once we have done that 3 times, we're going to move into the full Meridian 9 tapping points of our body. So you can say your setup statements 8 to 10 times per tapping point. And we're actually, so on the screen, even though it's labeled number 9, I'm actually going to have you start at the top of your head and work your way down. So it's going to be mom guilt, but I love myself. 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 So the top of your head. And like I said, using at least 2, 3, or 4 fingers. You're going to just use enough force that you can feel it, but not too much that you're going to leave a bruise or any sort of marking. So once you do that 8 to 10 times at the top of your head, you're going to move down to your inner eyebrow. Now, it doesn't matter which side of your body that you do. Most of us who use EFT tapping techniques will end up going through this cycle a couple of times, and you can switch off during the next round. But truthfully, it doesn't matter which side. You're doing a balance, and it's balancing both sides, because the way that we're going down, we're hitting specific meridian points, like I said, that are designed to balance you out. So top of the head, then we're going to go on the inner eyebrow, kind of next to where your third eye would be. That's going to be, again, 8 to 10 times tapping that side. And then we're going to go to the side of the eye, kind of where it's creased, maybe where you would have eyeliner, ladies. And then you're going to tap right there 8 to 10 times, saying your setup statement phrase, your reminder. Then it's going to be 8 to 10 times underneath your eye. Underneath the nose, 8 to 10 times. The chin, 8 to 10 times. Then we're going to go to your collarbone. If you do not have a collarbone that's kind of popping out or easy to feel or find, go to your, the center of your neck where you can feel your vocal cords vibrating. And it's going to be about 2 inches to the side, either direction, left or right. So find where your vocal cords are vibrating, and then just kind of roll over about 2 inches either side. That's going to be your collarbone, 8 to 10 times that spot. And then the last spot is going to be underneath your arm on the side boob, essentially. So women, anyone who's identifying as a woman, it's going to be in the middle of your bra strap, kind of in line with your nipple. And guys, similar, it's going to be right in line with your nipple. So 8 to 10 times on that tapping point. If for whatever reason you can't reach that spot, if you have mobility issues, you just can't seem to reach that spot, you can also tap on your, trying to get into the camera, you can tap on your forearm 8 to 10 times on your forearm. So run through that, starting at the top of the head, working your way down, 8 to 10 times each spot. Once you go through the first round, take a moment, at least 20 seconds, to just breathe, to just sit with yourself and notice what you're noticing. Do you feel tired? Are you yawning? Are you having some sort of release? And yes, yawning is a release. So do you feel pain? Do you feel the absence of pain? And then go back to the question that we asked ourselves before we started any sort of tapping. How intense is this feeling for me right now on a scale of 0 to 10? Same measurement. So 0 is going to mean I have very little to no feelings about this issue. 10 is going to represent I have very strong or significant feelings about this issue. So I actually want you to keep going, keep tapping, doing the whole round until you reach 0. Now, this may not happen in one day. It may not happen in 1 week. It may not happen in 1 month. That is okay. I want you to celebrate your progress. So, for example, maybe you start out at a 10 with whatever your problem was that day or whatever you were experiencing. If you get down to a 5, look how much of an improvement that is already. So I want you to celebrate your success and don't get too caught up in getting to 0. Because like I said, we're human. We're always going to have problems that arise and bubble up. And it's our job to really kind of find the tools that help us get back to who we really are at our core and remember our natural state of love, of peace, of joy. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you have any questions about the healing process or any of my work, you can visit me at elevatedaura.com.